Welcome to Just Start, Get Visible, your go-to resource of the journey to becoming more visible in a way that feels right for you. Hey there. Welcome back to yet another episode of Just Start, Get Visible. It's Jacqueline here. And it's time for us to continue pulling the threads from our very last episode, which was episode number 271, by the way. We talked to Torie McDonald. She joined me right here in the podcast studio, and we talked about so many different things, but we really drilled deep on a few key things that are worth us pulling apart even further. We talked about why staying curious has been a bit of a strategy of hers, but more specifically, why staying curious and learning is a huge commitment that she has. And when she said that, I couldn't help but think about, particularly over the past week, as I've been thinking about this episode and recording it, I've been thinking about how curiosity has been such a huge part of my growth. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a second. But if you haven't listened to episode number 271, it's the perfect time to go listen to it because it's a great anchor episode as we pull apart some key pieces throughout the entire rest of this month, because that's how we roll, right? I always have one guest in the chair here with me physically in the studio, and then I use the other 3 episodes as an opportunity to pull apart, to go deeper on the things that they talk about, because it's important. And we don't just want it to be a quick flash in the pan of content. We want to pull this content apart to make sure you can get more out of it. So I want you to stay curious. Stay curious and know that learners and people that are genuinely interested and curious about things, they're the people that reap the benefits on creating more opportunities. So officially, welcome to this podcast episode number 272, all focused on staying curious and why learners and curious folks create more opportunities. Okay, I can't help but think about some key stops that I've made on my career journey. And career journey meaning personal and professional, entrepreneurial, and corporate, because I've been in all those spaces. And one thing that's been very consistent about my journey is my interest in just being curious. And being curious a lot of times in opportunities that I don't think are going to amount to anything, but literally just being curious. If I think about my 8-year stint at AARP, that opportunity came about, quite frankly, because I was scratching my curiosity itch. Someone randomly, and I really do mean randomly, reached out to me on LinkedIn and asked if I would be interested in an event management contract position. That's how my whole journey at AARP started. And if you're familiar with my hugely previous journey, I spent the first 8 years of my entrepreneurial life being a wedding and event producer. That's the first company that I ever founded. And so that planted the seed for my curiosity into event productions, weddings, etc. And whoever connected with me on LinkedIn, she actually saw that. She saw that in my background. And while I actually had no interest in getting a job, I had no interest or affiliation with AARP, what I did was I just activated my curiosity. And I was like, oh, okay, you reached out to me. I'm new in the DC area because we had just moved from Detroit. And I'll just have the conversation with you. And quite frankly, that ended up being one of the most memorable and impactful career stops that I made. Like, I am a much more confident ager because I worked at AARP. Some clients that I have are as a result of the relationships that I created at AARP. I literally stayed curious. But I can give you so many different stories about how my curiosity created opportunities for me. Even if I think about when Scarlett first started, of course, I own a company called Scarlett where we help leaders become better leaders through leadership and etiquette training. But that company started specifically with the intent to teach etiquette to teen girls. And then other companies start calling. The Detroit Lions called. And when they called, I was like, I've never taught professional athletes before, but I'll have the conversation because I'm curious. That ended up with such a meaningful stop in our journey and opened doors to do other modern etiquette things that other organizations weren't doing. And so we remained curious, or I remained curious. And so I can just give you story after story after story of how I have allowed my curiosity to thrive, right? By literally saying, oh, I'll take the conversation, or I will take the call, or I'll just have a quick dialogue with you. And it taught me something about myself, opened an opportunity up for me, help me to decide what I don't want. But staying curious has certainly been a bit of a flex for me throughout my career. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into that. And make sure you can walk away, perhaps with a tool that gives you permission to be more curious instead of just saying no to everything all the time. All right. Because here's the thing. Yes, we are here on the Just Start Get Visible podcast to help you get visible in a way that feels right for you. But visibility might open up some doors. But what I know for sure is that curiosity and continuous learning, they help you maximize the opportunities that come your way. So let's dig all the way in. Okay. I believe that curiosity is a growth and leadership advantage. And whether you're coming here because you're curious about starting something that you want to do, you're curious about getting visible in a way that feels right for you, you're on your leadership growth journey, you're thinking, you know what, this can be another tool that I can use in my toolkit. Being curious is a leadership advantage because it gives you the opportunity to pause, to listen, and then decide. Because a lot of times we just dive deep into stuff, start giving our opinions, start giving our perspective. But it's like, have you paused? Have you listened to what's possible? Have you taken that data, that information, and done something with it, analyzed it, sat with it, etc., and then move forward? Versus just talking. I know what I know, when in fact we're constantly learning stuff over and over again. So curiosity can be a flat out leadership advantage of yours. And so I encourage you to embrace that, pocket that, use that when you need to. Okay. In addition, though, being curious opens up an opportunity for you to get more information, learn a little bit more, and then go into research mode. And this is something that Torie and I talked about quite a bit on episode number 271. She is in the wellness space. And the wellness space, as many of us know, has opened up like none other, particularly over the past 10 to 15 years. So many different ways to attack our wellness, address our wellness, etc. Torie happens to operate in the Pilates space. But over the past, I would say 5 years, she's like grown. She continues to take more courses. She continues to take more certifications. I feel like every time I go in with her, she's like, oh yeah, I'm about to go to this conference. I'm about to go to this opportunity. But guess what? In order for her to maximize those opportunities, she got to do a little bit of research. Like, is this for me? Does this make sense? And so I really want you to commit to being curious, but commit to being curious as a catalyst, right, for you doing the research that's needed in order for you to decide where you want to put your time, talent, and your energy. And it's important to do the research, whatever the research is in your space. I think right now we are in a space of information overload, particularly online. And we see lots of instances of people spouting out information that other people are listening to, other people are fortunately, unfortunately taking action on. And they haven't did their research. Like, they position themselves to be a thought leader, influencer, whatever. But have you really did your research? And what's the harm that you're doing to other people who are listening, trusting you, right? Putting your things into action, and they didn't do their research. So let's not be those people here. As we're thinking about just starting and getting visible in a way that feels right for us, it's important that we do our research in the spaces that we're in, independent of what you're interested in. You're interested in starting a photography business, painting a little bit more, starting a consulting business, getting visible in this space, that space. But have you done your research, right? So stay curious, but use that as a catalyst for you to do your research. I am someone, and this is a straight up, like full blown honesty moment. I'm probably sitting in your psychology chair just for the moment. I am someone who has historically had a hard time at conferences when I go to conferences. And the reason why is because I usually spend so much of my time being on the other side of being someone who's keynoting, facilitating something, moderating a panel, a fireside chat, etc. So I'm normally the person that's on the stage. However, I know and I absolutely believe that it's important for us to put ourselves in spaces to learn. And conferences and spaces like that are often a great way to do it. But the other piece of information that I want to share with you all, and for many of you, I'm reminding you of is that I have been speaking in some capacity for a really long time, like since the fourth grade with my fourth grade teacher, Miss Leanna Jackson. Hey, girl, she's maybe still listening to this podcast today. And because I am usually on the other side of a conference situation, presenting, teaching, pouring out value to people that invested their dollars to be there, I know how to show up in a way that captures attention, that ensures that people don't get bored, that people don't get restless. So when I'm on the other side of that and I'm listening, it's hard for me to turn off that piece of paying attention to things outside of just the content. So I'm looking at the lighting, and I'm looking at the chair selections, and I'm looking at the graphics on the screen, and I'm looking at body language and all these things that I'm in tune to because this is partly what I do for a living. However, I know for sure that every single time that I go to a conference, even when I force myself to sit, in the back, inconspicuously somewhere, right? And I just commit, even though my mind is going a million miles a minute with thinking about this and that. And don't forget as well that I used to be an event planner, right? And so I'm also looking at the staging and all these other logistical things that I think a lot of people just aren't paying attention to. I commit to, and I force myself to calm my mind, sit and listen to the content, absorb the content. And what's so interesting about that is every single time I do it, although it's slightly painful because it's hard for me to turn off these other pieces that I'm analyzing, I always get something out of it. Always. I have really remained committed to being teachable, to being someone who's committed to learning, regardless of my experience, regardless of the age of the person that's on the stage and the experience of the person that's on the stage. There's always something that I can learn. And that is a bit of an offshoot from my commitment to staying curious overall. Like, okay, I need to stay curious. I take it even further where I have a learning hour. I talk about this a lot, particularly in spaces with Scarlett, where we help leaders become better leaders. And one of our key audiences is individual contributors that are advancing or elevating to being a people leader. It's a big adjustment. But what happens is when you make that big adjustment, now your work changes. You're not just the person that's doing. You now need to be leading other people. But a big mistake that I see a lot of folks make is that you go into this mode of not leaving any margin or leaving any room to continue to learn. Because if you're still trying to grow, if you're not leaving any room to learn, to challenge yourself, to push yourself, then guess what? Sometimes you get stuck in that role when in fact you're like, this was just a stop on the journey. But are you creating the space to have some more intellectual space to learn, to grow? So for me, what I do is I commit to a learning hour every single week at a minimum. And that's an hour where I'm on a webinar, I am reading an article, I'm doing something intentionally that is allowing me to get more knowledge and information to be of better service to the people that we teach etiquette and leadership to. And so I especially express that opportunity to create that space when you are a growing leader, but also in this space when you're trying to get visible, when you're trying to start whatever it is that you're trying to start. Yes, you can do and hustle, but are you learning more? I want to really challenge you to remain teachable and remain being somebody who is in the spirit of learning regardless of your experience. And right now is a perfect time in the world to remind you all how critical that is. Think about how quickly AI has come into our life. Think about how instrumental social media has been, particularly if you're using it as a tool to grow, to learn, etc. And what if you just say, you know what, I'm never going to rock with the internet. I'm never going to stretch myself to learn a little bit more about social. I forget AI, right? Then guess what? Sometimes we get left behind. There are lots of people I know that feel left behind because they did not commit to learning, right? And I'm not saying you have to be an expert at it, but committing to staying curious and remaining teachable has certainly been something that has served me well. And I do believe that if you lock in and commit to that for yourself, it can serve you well as well. I often will ask audiences that I have the privilege of being in front of, I'll do a quick poll to ask who's a great listener. And it always ends up being some certain number of people that say, yeah, I'm a great listener, and certain number of people who said that I'm on the journey to become a better listener. And what I'll tell you is that most people who are better listeners, are good listeners, or on the journey to even become a better listener, they've committed to asking better questions, right? They ask better questions instead of trying to have all the answers. In this opportunity for you to stay curious, I want you to commit to asking better questions, because if you are here to get the tips, tools, research, storytelling, support, right, camaraderie, community, to just start and get visible in a way that feels right for you, you probably don't know everything. Actually, I don't care who you are listening today, you don't know everything. But particularly if you're earlier in your journey, you definitely don't know everything. And that's okay. And we don't have to know everything. But what we can do is ask better questions instead of thinking that, you know what, I need to have the answers all the time, or you're going to have the answers all the time. So instead, how might you position yourself or get some tools, some information, some phrases in your toolkit so that you can better ask questions and stay curious in a way that feels right for you. And I'll give you my phrase. Just yesterday, a friend of mine said something that I didn't quite understand. It was something that was in a space that I probably should have, or I felt like I should understand it. But you know what my three words are that position me to stay curious without necessarily saying, I don't know what you're talking about, is tell me more. Tell me more. Say more. Right. And those few words allow me the space to learn, to be curious, right? To make it real simple that, hey, I want some more information. Now, I'm not ashamed to say to somebody flat out verbatim, hey, I'm not really sure what you're talking about, or I'm not familiar with that. I will learn to love more. I'm not afraid of any of those phrases. However, sometimes we feel some kind of way about not telling people like, hey, I don't know that, I don't understand that, for whatever reason. It could have been when you grew up you weren't allowed to ask questions, or for some reason you feel like you have to have all the answers for whatever walks of life we're on, and sometimes it just ends up being that way. And if you're not so comfortable with, like, you know, fully falling on the sword and saying, hey, I don't know what you're talking about, phrases like say more, tell me more, I love to learn a little bit more about that, they hit a little bit softer. And so you might want to take those and use them. Completely use those. I'm okay with you doing that. But I really want you to ask better questions, right? Ask better questions instead of trying to have all the answers, because you don't have all the answers. You won't have all the answers as you're starting. And you can put yourself in a position to stay curious. Okay. The last insight or tip that I want to give you in the spirit of staying curious is how important it is to prepare. All right. And some people are really surprised when I tell them how much I still stay in preparation mode for the many things in my world. Like, for example, a part of my world includes teaching, either digitally or in person. And a lot of the subjects that I teach over time, I've been teaching them forever. I've been teaching them for a really long time. Now, I truly believe in refreshing my content as much as possible, making it modern, making the visuals more appealing, creating or putting in stories that are relevant in my life, that things that are really happened to me or happen in the lives of some of my clients. And some people are surprised to know how much I still practice. I still practice everything. Even when I teach dining etiquette, I'm still practicing. I've been teaching dining etiquette now for about 15 to 16 years. I know those subjects back and forth. Like, I could teach right now. I can just teach a whole class just right off the dome, right out of my head, because I've been doing it for such a long time. However, guess what I still do? I still practice. Just a week ago, Scarlett had a pretty big contract with National PAL, and we taught subjects around professional etiquette and also being a good global citizen, specifically in the areas of travel etiquette. I've taught those subjects a gazillion times. But guess what I did? I practiced. I prepared. And why is that? It is because I know that preparation creates confidence. And while I am a confident person, what I do know for sure is that I still very much get nervous. And it doesn't matter if the kids are 7 or the grown-ups that I'm teaching are 77. I still get nervous. And partly because I respect people's time so much that I believe that if I'm going to be in front of you, if I'm going to be taking something or taking up your time, which you're never going to get back, it is my responsibility to prepare. And that is a mantra that I take on. And I spread that mantra through the people who also teach for Scarlett as well. I know that for me, preparation creates confidence, because even though I might be a little bit nervous, right? I might have a little anxiety because that just comes along with me teaching. It's just a part of the Jacqueline package. Like, me practicing, I'm confident about the content that's coming. I know what's coming. I know what I want to say next. Whether my body is cooperating with me or not, it's a whole different thing, but I'm going to do it anyway. Nervous, sweaty, whatever it is, I'm going to still do it. But preparation creates confidence instead of winging everything. And it's fascinating too, if we think about some of the greats, and you can think about sports, you can think about music, think about the arts, these people in their own shape, way, form, capacity, they still practice, right? They practice. And so who am I to come along? I'm great in the work that I do, but who am I to come along and just assume that I don't need to practice? I do. And so I want to encourage you to practice. and not just practice in whatever the area is that you decide to focus in from a Just Start Get Visible standpoint, but I want you to practice staying curious, right? Practice. Even if you know you're someone that's a no person, like you tend to say no first, I want you to embrace this opportunity, even if it's like an hour a week or just one pivot in how you're thinking and showing up. It's just one quick pivot. I want you to embrace staying curious, like saying yes a little bit more. Saying, you know what, I could learn a little bit more about that. Somebody presents something to you, and typically you're like, yeah, I don't take part in that kind of thing. Maybe this next time you'll say, you know what, I'm going to change it up and I'm going to stay curious and I'm actually going to go to that event, or I'm going to be open to that experience, or I'm going to be open to this learning opportunity. I really encourage you to stay curious as you're just starting and you're getting visible in a way that feels right for you. Listen, it has been an absolute pleasure spending time with you as always with episode number 272. I invite you to stay curious. If you're like, ooh, I'm really going to get down with this series and I look forward to all the other sub-subjects that we're talking about, go ahead and head back to our foundational episode, which was number 271 with Torie McDonald. And you can get there by going over to JacquelineMBaker.com/271. That's how all of our episodes are set up. You want to know what we released for the very first episode? Head back to JacquelineMBaker.com/001. It's there. All right. Wherever you're at in the world, I hope that you're safe. I hope that you're healthy. And I hope that you're well. And I certainly hope that you're giving yourself permission to start the things that you want to do and get visible in a way that feels right for you. Don't be a stranger. If there's something, a topic that you want us to cover, just shoot me an email at info@JacquelineMBaker.com. Also, I would love to get your feedback about the podcast. I love reviews. And so head over to wherever you listen to your podcast, and I would love for you to give us a review over there. Let us know your experience of listening in, because of course now we are well into the 200s from a release standpoint, but we love to hear from you. All right. You take care of yourself. And of course, I'll see you again soon. Ciao. Welcome to Just Start, Get Visible, your go-to resource of the journey to becoming more visible in a way that feels right for you.